For one night, the wasteland of dashed hopes and dreams was restored to its former glory. Her declaration marked the start of a desperate battle. The witch in black laughed at her friend. Her musical mirth filled with affection, sadness, and innocent delight. Faded glory returned to Kätzchen. The neon glow of innumerable lights illuminated the night. Speakers filled the air with the sound of vinyl music. Merry-go-rounds, small and large, whirled round and round. All in all, it made for a mind-bending spectacle. It was certainly possible to power the facilities by transmuting magical energy into electricity via alchemy. That said, simply supplying the park with electricity would not have brought back to life that which was broken. The young woman did this not by mixing chemicals into a compound, but by melting down divine providence into a witch's brew.
まずいわね。アリスのプロイは何個か見てきたけど、今回のは桁が違う。セット。
Stifling her anxiety, Aoko fired up the crest on her right arm. If magic circuits were a mage's engine, then their crest was software that assisted their magecraft. For the fledgling mage Aoko, this was her trump card. All she had to do was supply magical energy to her crest-based formula. It may not have been the strongest magecraft, but it was hers, proof that she was the successor of the Aosaki lineage.
講師2層、直流数門。
The pattern on her crest shifted to execute the formula, which then connected to her magic circuits. The process resembled trains changing rails, a puzzle involving dozens of circuits. She constructed it as swiftly as possible without sacrificing the quality of its construction. Instant magecraft cast without an incantation would not be enough to reach Alice Kuonji. Aoko had gauged the strength of Alice's defense with her initial shot. She would dial up the power 5 times the next time, driving 20 tons of force into her target. Alice had the protection of the thick hanging fog and the dense barrier around her. However, this attack would be more than enough to pierce through both. If Aoko struck home, at best it would cave in Alice's chest and end the fight. At worst, it would at least knock Alice down from her position atop the clock tower.
そろそろいいかな?
As always, there was one guy who spoiled the deadly tension, pulling Aoko out of killer mode. Soichiro had been looking back and forth between Aoko and Alice in confusion.
それでどういう話になったんだ?
He said it like he might ask for direction to the train station. Normally, she would have lashed out screaming in response, but his entirely serious tone shook her more than it angered her.
信じられない。慣れてきた。
Mm-hmm. Aoko swallowed back a sigh and returned her focus to activating her crest.
交渉は決裂。ちょっと怒らせすぎた。あの子から見れば、まあいい機会だし、遊園地ごと私を亡き者にしようって腹ね。
Wie nett. Soichiro tilted his head, as if begging for a simpler explanation.
私、割とあの子に恨まれてるから。捕まったが最後、どんな風に殺されるか想像すらできないわ。要するに、あんたも私も、あの子をどうにかしないと生きて帰れないってことよ。
そんなとばっちりだ。
Du bist der Grund dafür.
まあ、そういうことになるかもね。
As Soichiro protested in a tone wholly inappropriate to the situation, Aoko let another blast rip from her right arm. She was not aiming at Soichiro though. A little earlier in the day, and Aoko would have been happy to do exactly that, but now her attention was focused on the girl in black atop the clock tower. Keine Chance. She could hardly grasp the situation amidst her astonishment. She fired the strongest, fastest magic bullet she had the ability to conjure, and Alice blocked it. That was to be expected. When Alice set her mind to defending herself, such an attack was child's play. But what just happened? Something she had never seen before had led to Alice's defense. A team of horses? A plague of locusts? No, those things existed in this world, unlike what Aoko had just witnessed. Normal creatures could not form like a spontaneous cloud of fog and then dissipate just as quickly into the night sky. Impossible things moved in impossible ways. Alice was not even supplying them with any power source. Those things never needed power in the first place. Those broken and discarded things did not follow the rules of mankind. Ugh. This was an invasion of fairy tales. Ugh. Compared to them, the automaton looked merciful. Autonomous puppets were products of magecraft, but even then they behaved as puppets should. These newly animated things, however, were nothing of that sort. Empty vessels became living creatures. Dummies warped into malformed beings. There was a fog so dense with magical energy it visibly spread to all corners of the park, bringing with it a monstrous welcoming party that easily outnumbered over 1,000. Spurred on by the shuddering sensation running down her spine, Aoko fired a barrage of single-action magic bullets. Her impulsive attack scattered futilely. The knights of the merry-go-round soared into the sky. Green fire-breathing lizards flocked. The bakeries opened their doors once again, and human-sized loaves of fresh bread marched from their ovens as platoons of newly baked soldiers.
青崎後ろ。
Aoko and Soichiro were completely surrounded. The Ferris wheel creaked as it gently turned. A rickety train raced about the roller coaster tracks with Kitsy, tears streaming down its face aboard. It was a grossly twisted fantasy. The girl in black reigned over the insanity-fueled park. Oh, now we're screwed. Aoko was transfixed by the scene unfolding around her. Then she realized what was happening.
そうだ、これは
Reality Mobber? Alice had once told her of Mainster familiars. Among them there were 3 of particular notoriety, one of which she recalled being capable of something similar to this. And it was called
プロイキッシャー、フラットスナーク。
青崎、だから後ろ。
Tis Pferd! Struck by Aoko's bullets, the creatures exploded into splinters. It was clear Aoko's shots were becoming more powerful, but it was also the case that these beings were less robust than our average automata.
しずきくん、こっち。
Aoko turned away from the clock tower, grabbed his hand and began to run.
青崎。
ごめん、これ無理。逃げるわよ。
逃げるってどこに？
どこって、とにかく行けるところまで。
She shouted as though trying to persuade herself as she violently cleared a path. Aoko's magic bullets flew like a scream, blowing away the creatures that stood in their way or rather simply gathered around. She made a hole for them to escape though. Ich dachte, sie hätte nur 30 Bullets. Magic bullets exploded like blue fireworks. Aoko and Soichiro ran down the bumpy brick road. Their bond, forged in the heat of battle, went far beyond mutual convenience. They headed for the park's exit at full speed, without exchanging a word or a look. Their weirdness only extended as far as the park's border. So they would be safe as long as they made it outside. But, speaking of pure number, the difference in strength was 2 versus an army. Or rather, 1 versus an army. Soichiro was hardly useful in this situation, and manpower wasn't really the issue here, since they were facing puppets.
さっきの大丈夫？上からこう、でっかいハサミが落ちてきたけど。
Aoko shouted as she blasted away the monster that stood in their path. There was no time to stop for breath, or even to look back.
なんとかギリギリ。
As Soichiro pursued his voice, become shrill. 5 minutes earlier, they had broken out of the siege at the plaza surprisingly fast. It seemed that the residents' awakening differed case by case, with larger creatures taking additional time.
ラッキー、朝に弱いタイプばっかと見た。
Aoko choked as she mowed down the small fry that popped up. But then, without warning, something outrageous extended its way down from above them. It was the claws of the 60-foot lobster adorning the roof of a seafood restaurant. Its pincers were like a guillotine. As Aoko and Soichiro cut across the front of the restaurant, the Red King pressed it in at a tremendous speed, keen on splitting them each in 2.
しずきくん、Uターン、こっちはダメ。
The gate was just on the other side of the restaurant, but they had to take the long way around in order to lose the giant lobster snapping at their heels. Waiting along their detour had been a horde of monsters too many to count.
なんとかギリギリ。
Soichiro called out in response.
って前、うわ、なんだあれ、焼きたてか。
そうみたいね。要するに下級兵士よ。距離765メートル。あの程度ならスナップだけで事足りる。
action that favor fire over power. And
青崎そっちも。
了解。いける。数でこそ押されてるけど、この状態が続くなら逃げ切れる。しずきくん、そっちは？
いない、空いてる。ここからなら入り口の東側に出られるはずだ。
構わないわ。予想通りよ。撃つこと、壊すことしか脳がなくても、青子の魔力の使い方は波じゃないから。急増の使い魔じゃまだ相手にはならないでしょう。でも残念ね。制限時間には気づいているわよね、青子。魔力はいくらでも貸してあげるけど、あなたの魔弾はあと半時で値崩れするわ。 しずきくん、正門ってこっち？
ああ、その店を曲がれば出口だ。
Sprint the entire circumference. And though they were no intimately familiar with the park's geography, changing limited to the park's residents either.
大崎、
何を？
言いたくないんだけど、この遊園地広くなってないか？
Its structure was expanding and growing like that of a living creature. The pair noticed that the mob encircled even stronger. Contrast to Sojiro, then dragging him into this mess.
大丈夫。落ち着け私。遊園地の果てはある。遠いけど鉄柵はちゃんと見える。フラットスナークだって制限なしってわけじゃない。外に逃げるって選択は正しいはず。現状外までは目算で1キロぐらいだけど。
Up until too concerned with simply running. Their breath had become labored. If they had to run another mile without
青崎、体大丈夫か？
え？
the whisper behind pulled Aoko back.
大丈夫だけど、ちょっと一息入れたいわね。
賛成。ここから休みなしで外周まで走るのはやめた方がいい。
驚いた。しずきくんも外まで走ろう派とは。
After saying this, she let go. Far from debilitated by pain.
ちょっとだけ建物に逃げ込むのは？
気は進まないけど、それしかないわね。
The brain completely surrounded. But it have been probably one for Aoko to break to the building would be a cinch. The issue was
問題はどんな店を選ぶかってこと。
she considered the characteristics of the performing park. What would put pressure and safe? The important factor was not the strength or the complexity of the building.
そうだ。選ぶならあの単純さで正しいはず。しずきくん、あっち。
The monsters hopped behind the corner suit. Hopped. Zero.
カウンターに隠れてて。
He was in a western shootout. Aoko squared off against the monsters using the cover. ビンゴ。ここならスナーク化しないんだ。 Snarky fat. After accessing the current state of the enemy, set herself under the counter.
あいつらは？
店の周りで地団打踏んでるわ。理由があってね。あいつらはここには入ってこられないのよ。
Aoko gave such a grin and took a deep breath. She heaved a heavy sigh of relief and fatigue.
とりあえずコーヒーブレイクね。ここは遊園地の中でも遊びのない場所だから、あいつらにとっては鬼門なのよ。レジスターも調理器具も最近のものだし、擬人化されたマスコットもないし、スナーク化するにはちょい文明犬すぎるってこと。
スナーク？
あいつらの名前よ。つけたのは私じゃなくてアリスなのかしらね。あの子の性格的にちょっと想像できないけど、まあとにかくそういう名前。
それはともかく調子良さそうだな、青崎。
あれ？あなたから見てもわかる？私の魔弾の威力が上がっているの。
そりゃミラーハウスで散々追いかけ回されたからな。あの時と同じ動作なのに物騒さが増していれば嫌でもわかる。でもいいのか？確か数に限りがあるとか言ってただろう。もう随分撃っちまったけど20、30じゃ効かないぞ。
あんた時々あれよね。
ん？
Her opinion of him improved just a little bit.
なんでもない。私の魔弾の威力が上がっているのは単純に魔力の濃度の問題。さっきから霧がかかってるでしょ？あれ全部魔力なのよ。弾を撃つための燃料と思って。
Magical energy was divided into two broad categories. First was Odd, produced inside a mage's body. Second was mana, which filled the atmosphere. At the moment, the amusement park had turned into a fairy tale land, overflowing with mana. Although it meant nothing to the average person, to a mage it was a paradise where spells could be cast as much as one pleased.
じゃあ残り魔力とやらは気にしなくていいのか。注意すべきは怪我と体力だけ。
まあ個人的な責任においてはその限りね。
Sochiro breathed a sigh of relief. From Sochiro's perspective, more so than the monsters she mowed down, Aoko was the biggest bully on the playground. He had been concerned about what would happen should her magical energy be exhausted, but luckily for him, she was far from surrendering her crown.
頼りにしてくれるのは嬉しいけど、ぬか喜びよ。あんな雑魚たち、ただ動いているだけのガラクタなんだから。スナーク本体は当然として、アリスが他の童話の怪物を出してきたら、私じゃどうにもならない。
他の童話の怪物？遊園地をこんな風に変えたやつ以外にまだいるのか？
そう。プロイキッシャーって名付けられた、私たちでさえ目を背けたくなる反則。不可能な夢物語をも再現する時代に取り残されたデタラメよ。
Sochiro's expression seemed to be calling her out on the hypocrisy.
あのね、私たちはちゃんと現代に寄り添った魔術師よ。できないこともあるし、当たり前のことだけど、近代兵器にはかなわない。20世紀、まあ、いろんな戦争の後押しで、兵器の進化は私たちを超えちゃったから。けど、あの子のは違う。どんなに人間の技術が進歩しようと関係ないって怪物なの。例えば、あのブレッドマンいるでしょ。あいつには自動拳銃とか効かないわよ。多分、意味が分かっていないから。アリスの使い魔は、全てが空想によってこねられた神秘なの。前提からしてありえないことだから、通常の物理法則と折り合いが悪い。空想と現実は両立しないっていう ごく当たり前の理由でね。
なるほど。ブレッドマンってのはあの動く焼きたてパンのことなんだな。
話を戻すけど、あいつらと近代兵器の相性は最悪。ロケット弾でも効果はないわ。意思の疎通、秩序の共有ができてないから。プロイキッシャーにとって彼らの世界には存在しないもの、意味がわからないものは触れることなく無賛する。彼らに通じるのは同じ神秘を帯びた魔力だけっていうデタラメぶりよ。もう完全に概念空間っていうか概念宇宙っていうか。要するにあいつらは伝承防御っていう特別なルールを持っていて、単純に強い力、強い魔術じゃ効果は薄いの。元になった童話にちなんだ欠点をつかないと倒せない。ギリシャ神話のアキレスあたり分かりやすい例えなんだけど、知ってる？
Oh God. Soichiro shook his head. Natürlich kennt das nicht.
無事帰れたら飛び丸あたりに教えてもらって。定番だけどいい話よ、あれ。
Soichiro was feeling pretty lost, but he did his best to grasp the situation. He thought that ploy kickshaws were scary enough to chase Aoko and that puppet from before out of the house barefoot. Certainly, the scene before them was the stuff of nightmares. But Soichiro had a different way of thinking.
やっぱり青崎の方が怖くないか？
あんた死ぬの？
Soichiro waved in protest, silently pointing out that she had made his case for him.
あのね、今私たちを取り囲んでるのはおまけに過ぎないの。アリスにとってあのブレッドマンもロブスターもソーセージ屋のミンチマシーンも全部が全部私が撃ってる魔弾より価値がない。いい？あの動くマスコットたちはね、ただのおまけなの。アリスが解放した童話の怪物の一呼吸みたいなものなのよ。
呼吸ってこれが？
私だって考えたくないわよ。でもそれが現状。たった一体の童話の怪物だけで私たちは手一杯。そういうわけだからアリスがあと一体でも追加したら諦めて。
追加ってこれに制限はないのか？
あの子が出し惜しみしなければまだ何体かストックはあるでしょうけど、まあ成立する条件はあるわね。例えば川がないと目を覚まさない怪物もいる。この遊園地噴水はあるけど川はないでしょ。元になった童話縛りなの、あの子の使い魔は。
Oh.
童話ってかけそばとか？
Bowl of soba noodles. Wie bitte?
ここに川がないのは不幸中の幸いね。もしあったらもっと直接制圧に向いたやつが出てきてた。
Aoko continued, completely ignoring Soichiro.
話の続きだけど、アリスの魔術の基本はマザーグースって知らないか？イギリスの歌で遊び心に富んだメルヘンチックな内容よ。ただそっち系のプロイキッシャーは怖くないの。みんなそれなりになんとか魔術にも落とし込める範囲だから。
聞きたくないんだけど、そっち系じゃないのは？
マザーグースを下地にしたとある創作童話系。あの子のお母さんが好きでね。こっち系のはどいつもこいつも尋常じゃない。私たちから見ても勘弁してって言いたくなるわ。で、この遊園地を生き返らせたのはこっち系よ。多分フラットスナークってやつだと思う。私も聞き流していたから詳しくはわからないけど。
Soichiro swallowed, the discomfort making its way up his throat. He really wanted her to explain things a little less vaguely, but something she had just said necessitates further investigation.
待て青崎、あの子の話を聞き流したって なんで？
いや、説明してもらったのは随分と前だし、あの頃はアリスの話あんまり信じられなかったのよね。私が素人だと思って大げさに自分の魔術を語ってくれてるな、舐められてるなとか。
In truth, if anyone hadn't taken the lesson seriously, it was Aoko. She would learn that lesson firsthand soon enough, when she experienced just how real Alice's monsters were. She'd also discover how heretical the mainster witches truly were in the world of magecraft.
その聞き流した内容は？
何でも強力な結界を張るプロイだって。アリスが受け継いだプロイは山ほどあるけど、その中でもえりすぐりの一つよ。捨てられたもの、忘れられたものを童話的に蘇らせるやつで、今まで誰も破ったことがないとか。それでついたあだ名が触れられぬもの。
フラットスナークじゃないのか？
それもあだ名。とにかく正体がわからないやつばっかりなんで、一つの個体に複数の名前が付けられるの。フラットスナークはその中でも正体不明さはトップランクのデタラメぶりよ。あなた、ルイス・キャロルのスナーク狩りって本知ってる？
Natürlich nicht.
いや、そもそもルイス・キャロルというのは。
そっからか。ドジスン教授はそうね、特殊性癖を持った妄想紳士ってとこ。まあこっちは別にどうでもいいか。人によっては時間の無駄だろうし。今重要なのは彼が残した著作の方。スナーク狩りはね、スナークって呼ばれる正体不明の怪物を捕まえようと奔走する冒険家たちの話なの。キャロルらしい皮肉ばっちり、支離滅裂、意味不明、結末不在の本当に困った本で、一行は島で苦しみつつ、最終的にはスナークを見つけるものの、見つけたベイカーは唐突に姿を消して終わってしまう。よくわからないもの探しに奔走する人間の風刺なんだけど、この遊園地において誰がベイカーで何がスナークかは言うまでもないでしょ。
Aoko elected not to share this, but Flat Snark had other popular names as well. The enigmatic island, the five-dimensional plane. These names were not given to it by Alice, but rather muttered by mages whom the mainsters defeated. In mathematics, a snark is a term used in graph theory to refer to contradictory and impossible planar graphs. A plane proven to be unable to exist in this world was given the name apt for an ill-fated existence, paradoxical in nature. The fairy tale monster ascribed this name was said to hold no form discoverable by man. Aoko also declined to mention something else. Flat Snark was a fairy tale monster that could grow. It would hide somewhere in the amusement park, continuously exhaling magical energy until the park completely transformed into a fantasy land.
ま、脅かしてもしょうがないし。
何か言ったか？
別に。簡単に言って童話世界の再生がフラットスナークの力なの。この遊園地との相性は抜群でしょうね。何しろ元々が童話を元にした遊び場だから。
If this had been a business district, for example, Flat Snark would have posed far less of a threat. At most, its power would be limited to projecting the shadow of a dinosaur onto a building window's panes.
あ、だからここは安全だって。ん
Soju realized that something was wrong when he noticed a gluttonous liquid dripping onto his back.
あ。
He looked up to the ceiling. Their eyes met. Before he had the chance to think, Sojiro hopped up from the floor.
青崎外だ!
Taking the initiative, he jumped out from behind the counter.
バカ、何して!
Busy trying to stop him from committing an act of suicide, she also came to her feet. Immediately she noticed something being brought to life overhead. Ugh. The gargantuan mouth clamped shut. With no mascot to speak of, the burger joint itself began to transform into one giant monster.
もうなんで天井にピエロの絵なんて描いてんのよあの店。普通もっと違うところに労力割かない？そんなにピエロが好きなら入り口にでも飾っとけ。
Aoko aired out her grievances as she ran. There was no safe haven left. Moment by moment, the last remnant of civilization were being eroded away by fairy tales. Ugh. The amusement park had reached the final stage of zombification. It was not just the mascot characters granted life. Like the burger joint, even the buildings had begun to transform. The road also that made its way about the park writhed and twisted like a Chinese dragon. Aoko and Sochiro stared, dumbfounded by the Ferris wheel, which had grown to over 250 feet in height. Hordes of breadmen closed in on them as if to offer tickets.
この列整理は間に合ってるっての。
Mobs of trinkets, actually kickshaws, rampaged the park. Whenever a hole was punched in the envelopment, it was instantly filled. It was a battle of attrition, with no end in sight. But that was a matter of course, as there were few fairy tales about limited resources.
なんかどうしようもないぞ。こいつら増える一方だ。
スナーク本体を探して。童話の怪物には本体に当たる器物があるの。それさえ壊せば遊園地から出られるはず。
Einfach gesagt als Plan.
本体ってどんな？
さっき言ったでしょ。童話の怪物は現実にないものだって。今までいなかったおかしなやつとか現実じゃありえないもの、それが本体。
Einfacher gesagt als getan.
おかしなやつって例えば？
だから命のある人形とか空飛ぶゴーカートとか。
Hast du dich mal umgesehen? Aoko paused her firing for a moment. After saying this out loud, she realized just how deep their grave was dug. The amusement park was a treasure trove of fairy tale-esque creatures on any given day. It was newly around.
そっか、おかしくないやつなんて一つもないんだ。この中に紛れ込んでる。
Vielleicht ist es die Kutsche? Hoping hung up a bit from lip. Flat stock was the type of deployed bounded fields. Seeing at it as it commanded so many familiars, not be unusual for its main or even no differences. Furthermore, if it was modeled from a story being untouchable and unidentifiable, it was logical to assume that it was in on itself shortly after being discovered.
逆に言えば見つければ私たちの勝ち。そんな脆いやつが雑魚に紛れ込む。木の葉を隠すなら森の中って言うけど。
Dann ist das fertig weg. It was closer to the truth than Aoko realized. As long as there was the slight possibility of it being hit by one of Aoko's stray bullets, it would not dare appear in front of them. Its true form was orchestrating the park from somewhere safe.
でもどこかに見えているはず。
Oh, ist es der Vogel?
スナークは本の主題だもの。常にページのどこかにいないと主人公の視覚がない。
But where? King is very safe as well as the symbol of the itself, perhaps.
あの子を捕まえるのは
Her eyes opened wide. While Aoko had been trying to come up with a plan, it so had been working as well. His proposal was a simple one. If they could not find the mark, they just needed to take out its master, Alice.
それは一番ダメ。アリスを殺してもフラットスナークは止まらないし、このトンデモが外に溢れ出すことになる。だいたい私じゃあの子を殺せないから、よくて半殺しがいいところ。
一応聞いておきたいんだけど。
何？手短にね。今考え事してるから。
ああ、あの連中が何をしたいか嫌っていうほど伝わってくるんだけど、それってあの子の趣味なのかな。
その疑問はなかったわ。連中の人間嫌いは遊園地の怨念とフラットスナークの性格じゃない。基本的にまともなやついないから、アリスの使い魔って。ああ、でも
それは結構。それで青崎の考え事って止める方法考えついたのか。
期待させて悪いけどお手上げ。あんたが殺されれば止まるでしょうけど。
それは嫌だ。とりあえず逃げよう。
しずきくん？意味わかんなすぎ。なんで今の流れでそうなるのよ、あんたは。なんでよ、さっきはあんなに諦めよかったのに。
ミラーハウスの時と今は違うだろ。いいから走れ。
違わないわよ。あんたを殺そうとした私も、あんたを殺したいアリスも、理由も結果も同じよ、私たち。 あのね、一緒に逃げてるぐらいで勘違いしないでくれる？言っとくけど私、明日になったらまたあんたを殺しに行くから。死にたくないってんならここで私からも逃げ出したら？
それはまた今度の話だろう。だいたい青崎に殺されるのならいいけど、あの子に殺されるのは嫌だ。
だからなんで？
だって顔も知らない、話したことさえない相手だ。
顔も知らないって。
But she was still keen to keep the snark from expressing its bad habits. After completing a lap around the park that had now reached the size of an entire town, the Robin made its situation report.
そう、外を目指しているの。
It seemed Aoko was prioritizing the safety of the boy. Even if it resulted in wasting an entire day, choosing not to capitulate on a decision was very much like her.
青子のことだから、時計台ごと私を焼き払いに来るかと思ったけど。
The bluebird chirped in response. Was it denying its master's portrait of Aoko, or agreeing that it was Aoko's style to do exactly that? An outsider might interpret its interjections either way.
退屈？
The robin jumped at being addressed so unexpectedly. It chirped and flapped its wings like a flustered servant, frantic to say otherwise.
珍しく気があったわね。いいわ。せっかくのゲームだし、もう少しだけ盛り上げましょう。
Ein Ei? Calmly, she pulled out a small object from her pocket. It was a dark grey Easter egg, and emanating from inside it was the tickling of a clock. The robin knew it to be a ploy kickshaw with a bad attitude, far exceeding flat snarks, known to be among the best in one-on-one situations.
いってらっしゃい。たたえる時間は20分に設定したわ。いつも通り控えめに壊れてきて。
The bomber? And together with the witch's breath, the egg filled with praise disappeared. Suddenly, a strong wind swept through the park. The words, "I could have killed them all by myself," floated through the air. It was the disappointment of something enormous that was both visible yet overlooked. Aoko and Sojiro continued their dash towards the boundary separating the park from outside. The curio horde that stood in their way had reduced in number. The iron fence that separated the two from the outside world was just over 300 yards away. Fortunately, there were no particularly large buildings barring their path. If the Ferris wheel had stood in their way, that would have spelled the end, but thankfully it had yet to reach its full strength. The only thing that appeared before them were weak oddities that could easily be handled by Aoko's simple magecraft. She would have said make it to the fence if her lungs would only allow it. Since Aoko was utilizing the ample mana filling the park, her tank of magical energy was nearly full. Coupled with the fact that the condition of her body's circuit was steadily improving to the extent that she would be able to unleash at least one all-out onslaught. Until, above her field of vision, something unusual was hovering. It was locked on Soichiro, hovering 10 feet above him over to one side.
しずきくん、ちょっと。
ああ、さっきからついてきてる。
Soichiro had seemingly noticed it before Aoko, hence his previous awkward glance towards the sky. In truth, it would have been stranger for him not to notice, as the thing was practically glued onto him. Queen Alice. Noon. In terms of its size, the floating object measured about 3 feet in diameter. Tiles covered its exterior, about which a multitude of spinning lights danced about.
卵かな。
Soichiro asked, not really sure what to call it.
卵？卵って言ったら割れる卵。
Her bullets bounced off like it was made of rubber. That trait, the ability to deflect all outside interference, confirmed to Aoko that this thing was undoubtedly a ploy kickshaw.
やっぱり外からのルールじゃ壊れないか。しずきくん、あれから絶対に目をそらさないで。いい、何があっても見続けること。視界の隅に入れとくだけでいいから。
ああ。
Aoko picked up her pace as she barked orders. The Eggman who sat on a wall. He would crack just as the tail spoke. Nothing anyone could do or say would cause him to fall, but the moment they stopped looking, he would tumble down and break into pieces.
いわく、王様の軍隊でも元に戻せない数の破片。
It was the Mother Goose poem, Humpty Dumpty. If Soichiro was its target, then the moment he averted his gaze, it would tumble and explode.
まあ、爆発するかどうかは知らないけど。
Either way, it was going to scatter something troublesome when it fell. Its oval shape, the keyhole adorning the front, and writing inscribed upon it, they all made her anxious. If it was an egg, that meant it was going to hatch at some point. Even if he continued his stare, once the time came for whatever was inside to come out, they would have even less ability to conserve the energy.
青崎、早すぎないか。あまり全力で走ると。
後のことは考えないで。いいからしずきくんは卵だけに集中して。
At this critical juncture, Breadman stepped out to join the egg and blocked the path.
邪魔！
The Breadmen were marching forth in a grand battalion. At her level of firepower, Aoko should have easily mowed them down. However,
片焼きかこの。
ah ja, die Kruste. If Snap failed to do the job, that meant it was time for her to put her crest to use. Draw, a formula-triggered bullet encased in a full-wind jacket. If her previous shot were the equivalent of a machine gun volley, then this was her artillery shot. The hard-crust bread that had absorbed her snap without a dent, scattered into 1,000 tiny pieces at her drawn's torrent.